The airport terminal was packed, buzzing with the loud, chaotic energy that always seems to happen during the holidays. It was the kind of place where the air smelled like coffee, pretzels, and too many people breathing in the same space. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a bright, stark light on the hundreds of travelers rushing to get to their gates. Among the sea of people was a young woman named Maya. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands falling into her eyes. And her clothes were wrinkled from a long journey that wasn't even over yet. Maya was traveling alone with her 2-year-old son. Leo, if you have ever traveled with a toddler, you know it is not a vacation. It is a survival test. Leo was at that age where he wanted to walk on his own, but didn't understand the concept of staying close. He was also tired, hungry, and overstimulated, which is a recipe for disaster in a busy airport. Maya was carrying a heavy diaper bag on one shoulder that was digging into her skin, a backpack on her other shoulder, and she was dragging a large, heavy suitcase behind her. To make matters worse, one of the wheels on the suitcase was broken. It didn't roll smoothly. It wobbled and shook, making a loud thumping sound every time it hit a tile seam. Thump, thump, thump. It was embarrassing, and it felt like everyone was staring at the noise. Leo started to whine, a low, pitiful sound that Maya knew would turn into a scream if she didn't fix it soon. He was tugging at her jeans, trying to get her attention. "Mama, up." "Up," Leo demanded, reaching his little arms into the air. "I know, baby, I know," Maya said softly, trying to keep her voice calm even though she felt like crying herself. "We have to get to the gate first. Just a little bit longer." She checked the departure board on the wall. Gate B14, it was far away. She took a deep breath, wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead, and started walking again. The broken suitcase fought her every step of the way. The crowd moved like a fast-moving river around her, and she felt like a rock stuck in the middle of it. People were bumping into her shoulders, rushing past without saying "excuse me." Everyone was in a hurry. Everyone had somewhere to be. Maya just wanted to disappear. Ahead of her, walking with a purposeful stride, was a man in a sharp, expensive-looking gray suit. He looked like he owned the place. His shoes were polished to a shine, and he was typing furiously on his phone, his head down, completely oblivious to the world around him. He was clearly a businessman, someone important, or at least someone who thought he was important. Let's call him Mr. Vance. Mr. Vance did not have time for slow walkers. He did not have time for crying children. He had a meeting to get to, or maybe he just wanted to get to the airport lounge to have a drink in peace. Maya tried to steer the suitcase around a family standing in the middle of the walkway, but the wobbly wheel caught on the edge of a metal sign. The suitcase jerked hard to the right, pulling Maya off balance. She stumbled, trying to regain her footing, but the weight of the diaper bag pulled her forward. In a split second, she crashed right into the back of Mr. Vance. It wasn't a gentle bump. It was a solid collision. Mr. Vance stumbled forward, his phone flying out of his hand and clattering onto the hard floor with a sickening crack. The sound made Maya's stomach drop. The crowd around them seemed to freeze for a second. Mr. Vance turned around slowly. His face was red and his eyes were narrow with pure anger. He looked at his phone lying face down on the ground. And then he looked at Maya, who was now frantically trying to pick up Leo, who had fallen onto his bottom and was beginning to wail. "You have got to be kidding me," Mr. Vance snapped, his voice loud and sharp. He picked up his phone and wiped the screen on his expensive suit jacket, checking for damage. "Are you blind? Or just completely incompetent?" Maya's face turned bright red. She felt the heat of embarrassment rising in her cheeks. She struggled to pick up Leo, who was now screaming at the top of his lungs because he was scared. "I am so sorry," Maya stammered, her voice shaking. She tried to drag her suitcase out of his way, but the handle was stuck. "It was an accident. The wheel is broken, and I lost my balance. I didn't mean to hit you." Mr. Vance didn't care about her apology. He looked at the crying child with disgust. He looked at the messy, chaotic woman in front of him and decided she was everything that was wrong with the world today. "An accident?" he scoffed, shaking his head. People like you shouldn't even be allowed in here if you can't control your own luggage. You're holding everyone up. You're a hazard. He took a step closer, invading her personal space, trying to intimidate her. Do you know how busy I am? I have a call in 5 minutes, and now I have to deal with this because you can't walk in a straight line. Maya felt tears stinging her eyes. She could feel the people around them watching. Some were pulling out their phones to record. Others were just staring, judging her. No one stepped in to help. No one told the man to calm down. Maya felt incredibly small and alone. She just wanted to board the plane and hide. I really am sorry, she whispered again, clutching Leo close to her chest. The toddler was burying his face in her neck, sobbing. Sorry doesn't fix my phone, and it doesn't fix my patience, Mr. Vance growled. He looked at his watch dramatically, tapping the face of it. Great, just great. Now I'm going to be late. You better hope you aren't on my flight because I cannot sit next to this screaming for 3 hours. He shook his head one last time, making a tisking sound with his tongue, and pushed past her roughly. His shoulder hit hers hard, knocking her sideways again. He didn't look back. He just marched toward the gate, straightening his tie as if he could physically straighten out the situation. Maya stood there for a moment, shaking. She took a deep, shaky breath. She wanted to sit down on the floor and cry, but she knew she couldn't. She had to keep going. She had to be strong for Leo, she whispered to him. It's okay, baby. Mama's here. We're okay. She fixed her bag, grabbed the handle of the stubborn suitcase, and started walking again. Thump, thump, thump. The sound seemed louder, now, mocking her. As she walked, she noticed the other passengers. A businesswoman looked at her and rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed by the crying child. A man in a hoodie just looked at his feet, ignoring the scene completely. It felt like a cold, heartless place. Everyone was focused on their own lives, their own schedules, their own problems. Maya felt invisible, except when she was in the way. She finally reached the gate area. It was crowded, with people lining up to board even though the attendant hadn't called their row numbers yet. There was a sense of urgency in the air that made Maya anxious. She found a corner near the windows and tried to organize her things. She needed to get Leo's sippy cup out of the bag to calm him down. As she rummaged through the bag, she saw Mr. Vance standing a few feet away. He was talking to the gate agent, his voice raised. He was complaining about something, probably demanding an upgrade or complaining about the wait. He looked agitated, tapping his foot furiously. He caught Maya's eye and smirked, a look of superiority that made her blood boil. He knew he had intimidated her, and he liked it. Leo was still crying, albeit softer now. He was tired. Maya picked him up and bounced him on her hip, swaying back and forth to soothe him. She looked out the window at the giant planes on the tarmac. She just wanted to get home. She wanted this day to be over. The interaction with Mr. Vance had drained the last bit of energy she had. She felt humiliated. Hey, are you okay? A quiet voice asked. Maya turned around, startled. It was an older woman sitting nearby. She had kind eyes and a knitted shawl over her shoulders. I think so, Maya said, forcing a smile. Just a rough travel day. I saw that man bump into you, the woman said softly. He was awfully rude. Some people think money makes them better than everyone else. Maya nodded, grateful for the tiny bit of kindness. It was my fault. I wasn't looking where I was going. Doesn't give him the right to be cruel, the woman said firmly. Especially with a little one. You're doing a good job, honey. Maya felt a lump in her throat. Thank you. She turned back to the window, but her mind was racing. She replayed the scene over and over. The arrogance in Mr. Vance's voice, the way he looked at her like she was trash. It wasn't fair. She was trying her best. Traveling alone with a toddler is one of the hardest things you can do. You're carrying everything you own, keeping a tiny human alive, and trying to navigate a confusing, crowded place. The last thing you need is someone yelling at you because of a broken wheel. Mr. Vance was still pacing near the counter. He checked his phone again, his face twisting into a scowl. It seemed his day wasn't going any better than hers, though for very different reasons. He was stressed about work and status. She was stressed about survival. The gate agent picked up the microphone. The feedback squeal made everyone cover their ears. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen," the agent announced. "We are now beginning boarding for Flight 492 to Chicago. We would like to invite our first-class passengers and those needing extra assistance to board at this time." The line surged forward. People gathered their bags, anxious to get on the plane and secure their overhead bin space. It was a mad dash. Maya stayed back. She waited. She knew it would take her a minute to get everything organized. She wanted to be the last one on, avoiding the end of the aisle. But she also knew that the longer she waited, the more anxious she felt. She took a deep breath, put her backpack on her front so she could wear Leo on her back, and grabbed the handle of the suitcase. She looked at Mr. Vance. He was standing at the front of the line, holding his boarding pass out like it was a winning lottery ticket. He looked back at the line of waiting people, his eyes scanning the crowd, and they landed on Maya again. He didn't smile this time. He just looked annoyed that she was still there, breathing the same air as him. Maya tightened her grip on the suitcase. "Come on, Leo," she whispered. "Let's go." She joined the slow shuffle of passengers moving toward the jet bridge. The air felt heavy. The energy was tense. She could feel that something else was about to happen. The Heartless moment with Mr. Vance wasn't just a random accident. It felt like the start of a storm. And as she walked closer to the gate, she had no idea that the storm was about to break in a way she never expected. All because someone unexpected was watching from the shadows of the waiting area. The walk down the jet bridge felt like a march toward the unknown. It was a long, narrow, windowless tunnel that funneled hundreds of people from the terminal into the giant metal tube of the airplane. The air inside was stuffy and recycled, smelling faintly of jet fuel and rubber. Maya was sweating now, the dampness sticking her shirt to her back. Leo, usually a cheerful boy, was past the point of no return. He was arching his back, letting out a high-pitched wail that bounced off the metal walls of the bridge. It was a sound that seemed to pierce right through the noise of the shuffling feet and rolling suitcases. Maya whispered to him, trying to keep her voice steady, but she could feel her own heart beating fast in her chest. "Almost there, buddy. Just a little bit more. We're going to sit down soon and you can have your juice." But Leo didn't want juice. He didn't want to sit down. He wanted to run. He squirmed in Maya's arms, nearly knocking her glasses off. She had to switch him to her other hip, which was already aching. The heavy diaper bag was slipping off her shoulder again, and she had to jerk her head to keep the strap from falling. She looked like a one-woman circus act, trying to balance a toddler, 2 bags, and her own fraying nerves. As they stepped through the door of the plane and into the cabin, the temperature seemed to drop. The air conditioning was blasting, creating a cool contrast to the humid stress Maya was feeling. The flight attendant stood at the door, forcing a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome aboard," she said mechanically, looking at Maya's boarding pass. "You're in row 28, that's all the way back. Past the wing." "Thank you," Maya mouthed, her voice drowned out by the noise of the engines roaring outside the windows. The aisle of the plane was incredibly narrow. On either side, people were already settled into their seats. Some reading, some talking on their phones, others trying to shove bags into the overhead compartments that were clearly too small to hold everyone's belongings. Maya squeezed past a man standing in the aisle, muttering an apology when her bag brushed against his leg. He didn't look up, just grunted and moved his knee closer to his seat. The broken suitcase was a nightmare. Every time Maya pulled it forward, the wobbly wheel caught on the carpet seams that ran down the middle of the aisle. Thump, drag, thump, drag. It was heavy. It felt like it was filled with rocks instead of clothes and diapers. Every step was a battle against gravity and friction. People seated in the rows ahead of her were turning their heads to look at the source of the noise. When they saw the screaming toddler and the struggling mother, many of them rolled their eyes. It was a look that said, "Please don't sit next to me." Maya felt the weight of their judgment. She knew she was the problem passenger. She was the delay. She was the noise. She just wanted to get to her seat and vanish. When they finally reached row 28, Maya let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for an hour. Row 28 was a window seat and a middle seat. The aisle seat was occupied by a young woman with large headphones who was already asleep with her head against the wall. Maya had the middle seat. Mr. Vance, the man from the terminal, was supposed to be right behind her in row 29. Maya's first challenge was the overhead bin. The compartment was high up, too high for her to reach comfortably while holding Leo. She looked at the empty space above her row, then at her suitcase. She had to act fast. She couldn't leave Leo standing in the aisle. He would try to run down to the cockpit. But she couldn't lift the suitcase with one hand. She decided to try a risky move. She wedged Leo between her legs, holding onto his wrist tight. "Stay right here, Leo. Don't move. Mama has to lift the bag." Leo, sensing freedom, tried to pull away. "No, down!" he shrieked. "Just 1 second, baby, please," Maya begged. She grabbed the handle of the suitcase with both hands. It was awkward because she had to hunch over to keep her leg near Leo. She took a deep breath and heaved upward. The suitcase left the floor, but it was heavier than she remembered. Her arms shook. As she lifted it, the broken wheel snagged on the edge of the armrest of the aisle seat, jerking the suitcase sideways. Maya lost her grip. The suitcase crashed back down onto the floor with a loud thud that shook the whole. Leo let out a terrified scream and burst into fresh tears. The woman in the window seat jolted awake, ripping her headphones off, and glaring at Maya. The noise echoed through the back of the cabin. Maya's face burned with shame. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the woman, then to Leo. "It's okay, baby. It's okay." She tried again. This time, she used her foot to help hoist the bag. She grunted with the effort, her muscles straining. She managed to get the bag resting on the edge of the bin, but she needed one final push to get it inside. She stood on her tiptoes and shoved. The bag slid in, but her water bottle fell out of the side pocket and bounced off the head of the man sitting in the row across from them. "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry," Maya cried out, reaching over the seats to retrieve it. The man just stared at her, stunned. Rubbing his head where the plastic bottle had hit him, she finally got the bag secured and slammed the bin shut. She was sweating, her heart was racing, and her son was screaming his lungs out. She picked up Leo, who was now flailing his arms and hitting her in the face, and she squeezed into the middle seat. It was a tight fit. She felt claustrophobic immediately. The woman in the window seat put her headphones back on and pulled her hoodie up, clearly signaling that she wanted nothing to do with them. Maya strapped Leo into the seatbelt next to her. He arched his back, turning red in the face. "I want Daddy," he screamed. "I want down. Daddy's at home, remember? We're going to see Grandma," Maya tried to explain, digging through her bag for his pacifier. "Look, here's your Pachi. Look at this toy." Leo slapped the toy away. It hit the metal wall and fell under the seat in front of them. Maya leaned over to get it, her face almost touching the dirty carpet. She couldn't reach it. She sat back up, defeated Dot, and then, the voice behind her cut through the air like a knife. "You have got to be joking." It was Mr. Vance. Maya froze. She didn't want to turn around. She just wanted to disappear into the plastic seat. "You have to be kidding me with this," Mr. Vance continued, his voice loud and clear, carrying over the sound of the engines. "First, you assault me in the terminal, and now you decide to torture me for the entire flight by sitting in front of me?" Maya turned slowly in her seat to face him. Mr. Vance was sitting in the aisle seat directly behind her. He had his jacket off and his tie loosened, but his face was still twisted in that same look of arrogant anger. He was staring daggers at her. I didn't know you were sitting here," Maya stammered. "I'm just trying to get him settled." "Settled?" Mr. Vance laughed, a cruel, short sound. "He is screaming. He is kicking the back of my seat. I haven't even taken off yet, and I already have a headache." "He's just a toddler," Maya said, feeling a spark of defensiveness. "He's tired. He'll stop once we take off?" "I don't care if he's tired," Mr. Vance snapped. "I care about my peace and quiet. I paid for a ticket to sit in a civilized environment, not a daycare center." Can't you control him? Maya felt tears pricking her eyes again. She turned back around and faced the front. She put her hand on Leo's head, trying to soothe him, but he was still crying. Mr. Vance wasn't done. He leaned forward, poking Maya hard in the shoulder. Hey, I'm talking to you. This is unacceptable. You people think you can just do whatever you want and everyone else has to suffer for it. If that kid doesn't shut up, I'm going to lose it. The cabin was quieting down now. Most people were seated. The flight attendants were beginning their final checks. Because the back of the plane was relatively quiet, Mr. Vance's voice was booming. People in the rows ahead were turning around to watch. A few teenagers pulled out their phones, recording the scene. It was a modern reflex whenever there was conflict. The cameras came out. The flight attendant, a friendly man with a mustache, walked down the aisle quickly. He had seen Mr. Vance poking Maya. He stepped between their rows. Sir, is there a problem here? The attendant asked firmly but politely. Yes, there is a problem, Mr. Vance said, pointing a finger at Maya. This woman is incapable of controlling her child. The kid is screaming, she's dropping things, she's hitting people. It's a disturbance. I demand to be moved, now. The flight attendant looked at Maya, then at Leo, who was sobbing quietly now, burying his face in his mother's shirt. The attendant's expression softened when he looked at her, but he had a job to do. Ma'am, is everything okay? He asked Maya gently. Yes, Maya whispered, not looking up. We're fine. I'm sorry for the noise. It is not fine, Mr. Vance interrupted, leaning his arm on the headrest of the empty seat next to him to get a better view. I want to be moved to first class. I can't fly like this. I have important work to do. Sir, first class is full today, the flight attendant said patiently. I can try to find you another seat in economy, but the flight is almost fully boarded. I don't want another seat in economy, Mr. Vance yelled. I paid for comfort. Look at this. He grabbed the screen on the back of Maya's seat and shook it. She's going to be kicking this the whole time. I demand you do something about her. Kick her off if you have to. I have rights? You are not kicking anyone off, the flight attendant said, his voice dropping an octave. He was losing his patience. Sir, you need to lower your voice. You are causing. She decided to try a risky move. She wedged Leo between her legs, holding onto his wrist tight. Stay right here, Leo. Don't move. Mama has to lift the bag. Leo, sensing freedom, tried to pull away. No, down, he shrieked. Just 1 second, baby, please, Maya begged. She grabbed the handle of the suitcase with both hands. It was awkward because she had to hunch over to keep her leg near Leo. She took a deep breath and heaved upward. The suitcase left the floor, but it was heavier than she remembered. Her arms shook. As she lifted it, the broken wheel snagged on the edge of the armrest of the aisle seat, jerking the suitcase sideways. Maya lost her grip. The suitcase crashed back down onto the floor with a loud thud that shook the whole. Leo let out a terrified scream and burst into fresh tears. The woman in the window seat jolted awake, ripping her headphones off, and glaring at Maya. The noise echoed through the back of the cabin. Maya's face burned with shame. I'm so sorry, she whispered to the woman, then to Leo. It's okay, baby. It's okay. She tried again. This time, she used her foot to help hoist the bag. She grunted with the effort, her muscles straining. She managed to get the bag resting on the edge of the bin, but she needed one final push to get it inside. She stood on her tiptoes and shoved. The bag slid in, but her water bottle fell out of the side pocket and bounced off the head of the man sitting in the row across from them. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Maya cried out, reaching over the seats to retrieve it. The man just stared at her, stunned, rubbing his head where the plastic bottle had hit him. She finally got the bag secured and slammed the bin shut. She was sweating, her heart was racing, and her son was screaming his lungs out. She picked up Leo, who was now flailing his arms and hitting her in the face, and she squeezed into the middle seat. It was a tight fit. She felt claustrophobic immediately. The woman in the window seat put her headphones back on and pulled her hoodie up, clearly signaling that she wanted nothing to do with them. Maya strapped Leo into the seatbelt next to her. He arched his back, turning red in the face. I want Daddy, he screamed. I want down. Daddy's at home, remember? We're going to see Grandma, Maya tried to explain, digging through her bag for his pacifier. Look, here's your Pachi. Look at this toy. Leo slapped the toy away. It hit the metal wall and fell under the seat in front of them. Maya leaned over to get it, her face almost touching the dirty carpet. She couldn't reach it. She sat back up, defeated. And then the voice behind her cut through the air like a knife. You have got to be joking. It was Mr. Vance. Maya froze. She didn't want to turn around. She just wanted to disappear into the plastic seat. You have to be kidding me with this, Mr. Vance continued, his voice loud and clear, carrying over the sound of the engines. First, you assault me in the terminal, and now you decide to torture me for the entire flight by sitting in front of me? Maya turned slowly in her seat to face him. Mr. Vance was sitting in the aisle seat directly behind her. He had his jacket off and his tie loosened, but his face was still twisted in that same look of arrogant anger. He was staring daggers at her. I didn't know you were sitting here, Maya stammered. I'm just trying to get him settled. Settled? Mr. Vance laughed, a cruel, short sound. He is screaming. He's kicking the back of my seat. I haven't even taken off yet, and I already have a headache. He's just a toddler, Maya said, feeling a spark of defensiveness. He's tired. He'll stop once we take off. I don't care if he's tired, Mr. Vance snapped. I care about my peace and quiet. I paid for a ticket to sit in a civilized environment, not a daycare center. Can't you control him? Maya felt tears pricking her eyes again. She turned back around and faced the front. She put her hand on Leo's head, trying to soothe him, but he was still crying. Mr. Vance wasn't done. He leaned forward, poking Maya hard in the shoulder. Hey, I'm talking to you. This is unacceptable. You people think you can just do whatever you want and everyone else has to suffer for it. If that kid doesn't shut up, I'm going to lose it. The cabin was quieting down now. Most people were seated. The flight attendants were beginning their final checks. Because the back of the plane was relatively quiet, Mr. Vance's voice was booming. People in the rows ahead were turning around to watch. A few teenagers pulled out their phones, recording the scene. It was a modern reflex whenever there was conflict. The cameras came out. The flight attendant, a friendly man with a mustache, walked down the aisle quickly. He had seen Mr. Vance poking Maya. He stepped between their rows. Sir, is there a problem here? The attendant asked firmly but politely. Yes, there is a problem, Mr. Vance said, pointing a finger at Maya. This woman is incapable of controlling her child. The kid is screaming, she's dropping things, she's hitting people. It's a disturbance. I demand to be moved, now. The flight attendant looked at Maya, then at Leo, who was sobbing quietly now, burying his face in his mother's shirt. The attendant's expression softened when he looked at her, but he had a job to do. Ma'am, is everything okay? He asked Maya gently. Yes, Maya whispered, not looking up. We're fine. I'm sorry for the noise. It is not fine, Mr. Vance interrupted, leaning his arm on the headrest of the empty seat next to him to get a better view. I want to be moved to first class. I can't fly like this. I have important work to do. Sir, first class is full today, the flight attendant said patiently. I can try to find you another seat in economy, but the flight is almost fully boarded. I don't want another seat in economy, Mr. Vance yelled. I paid for comfort. Look at this. He grabbed the screen on the back of Maya's seat and shook it. She's going to be kicking this the whole time. I demand you do something about her. Kick her off if you have to. I have rights. You are not kicking anyone off, the flight attendant said, his voice dropping an octave. He was losing his patience. Sir, you need to lower your voice. You are causing a scene? Me? I'm causing a scene? Mr. Vance stood up. He was a tall man, and standing in the cramped aisle, he loomed over Maya and the flight attendant. She is the one making all the noise. She is the one who is incompetent. This is ridiculous. Who is your manager? I want your name. Maya was trembling. She felt everyone's eyes on her. The teenagers in the row across were whispering and laughing. The woman next to her had taken her headphones off again and was looking at Mr. Vance with a mixture of fear and annoyance. "Please," Maya said, turning around to face him. "Please just leave us alone. We aren't doing anything to you. We just want to go home." Mr. Vance looked down at her, sneering. He saw the tears on her cheeks. He saw the way she was holding her son, trying to protect him. A normal person would feel sympathy at this point. They would see a mother at her breaking point and back down. But Mr. Vance wasn't a normal person. He was a man who believed the world revolved around him. "Leave you alone?" he said, shaking his head. "You invaded my space in the terminal, and now you've invaded my space here. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're a terrible mother if you can't even keep a kid quiet for 5 minutes." That was the line. The words hung in the air, heavy and cruel. Maya gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Even the flight attendant looked shocked. "Sir, that is enough," the flight attendant said sharply, stepping between Maya and Mr. Vance completely. "Sit down immediately. If you do not sit down and be quiet, I will have to remove you from this aircraft." Mr. Vance's face turned purple. "You can't remove me. I have a meeting." "I don't care," the attendant said. "Sit down." The tension in the back of the plane was thick. It felt like the air pressure had dropped. Everyone was holding their breath. Mr. Vance glared at the attendant, then at Maya, then at the rest of the passengers who were watching him with disgust. Slowly, he sat down in his seat. He didn't do it gracefully. He threw himself into the chair and crossed his arms, muttering insults under his breath, but he wasn't done. As the flight attendant walked away to call the captain for backup, Mr. Vance started kicking the back of Maya's seat. Kick, kick, kick. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. It was hard enough to shake Maya forward. "Stop it," she whispered. "Make me," Mr. Vance whispered back, kicking harder. Leo was still sniffling, sensing the anger in the air. Maya reached out and held onto the seat in front of her to steady herself against the kicks. She felt trapped. She felt humiliated. She looked out the small window at the tarmac below, wishing she could just fly away on her own. She felt utterly alone, surrounded by strangers who were either recording her drama or ignoring her pain. In the row across the aisle, a few seats back, a man in a dark hoodie was watching. He had his cap pulled low over his face and he was reading a book, but he hadn't turned a page in 10 minutes. He had watched the whole thing, the struggle with the bag, the interaction in the terminal, and now this cruel bullying in the airplane. He wasn't recording the scene like the teenagers. He was just watching, his jaw set tight. He could feel the anger rising in his chest. He didn't like bullies. And he really didn't like seeing someone kick a woman when she was down. He looked at Maya, who was wiping tears from her eyes, and then he looked at the back of Mr. Vance's head. The man in the hoodie closed his book. He had heard enough. The kicks to the back of the seat kept coming. Thump, thump, thump. It was a rhythmic, aggressive pounding that vibrated through the plastic chair and into Maya's spine. She squeezed her eyes shut, gripping the armrest so hard her knuckles turned white. Every time his shoe connected with the back of her seat, it felt like a punch to her dignity. She wanted to turn around and scream at him, but she was terrified. She was scared that if she opened her mouth, she would start crying and never stop. She was scared that he would yell something even crueler, something that would make the entire plane turn against her. Leo, sensing his mother's tension, had stopped screaming. Instead, he was whimpering, a quiet, heartbreaking sound that he buried into Maya's shoulder. He was clutching her shirt with his little fist, his eyes wide and wet. He didn't understand why the man was angry, but he knew he was unsafe. "Trash?" Mr. Vance muttered from behind her, just loud enough for her to hear. "Can't believe I'm stuck behind trash. Ruining my whole day." Maya took a shaky breath. She looked around the cabin. The teenagers were still recording, their phone cameras capturing her humiliation. The lady in the window seat had her hoodie up, pretending to be asleep so she wouldn't have to get involved. The flight attendant was still up at the front, speaking quietly into the intercom, likely asking the captain for instructions. Maya felt completely isolated. It was her and Leo against the angry man. Then she heard a sound from the aisle across from her. It was the sound of a seatbelt unbuckling, the sharp click that cuts through the hum of the engines. Maya opened her eyes and looked up. Standing there was the man in the dark hoodie. He had been sitting quietly a few rows back, minding his own business. He wasn't very tall, but he had a presence about him that made the space feel smaller. He reached up and pulled his hood down, revealing a face that was handsome but rugged, with tired eyes and a beard that looked like it hadn't been shaved in a few days. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't look at the flight attendant. He looked straight at Mr. Vance. "Hey," the man said. His voice wasn't loud. It was deep and calm, but it carried a weight that made the air around them freeze. It was the kind of voice that didn't need to shout to be heard. Mr. Vance didn't stop kicking at first. He was too focused on being angry. "What do you want?" he snapped, not turning around. "You need to relax," the man in the hoodie said. He took a step closer, standing right in the aisle next to Mr. Vance's row. Mr. Vance stopped kicking. He turned his head, ready to attack whoever was interrupting his tantrum. "Excuse me? Who are you talking to?" "I'm talking to you," the man said. He crossed his arms, but he didn't look threatening. He just looked serious. "You're kicking her seat. You're yelling. Everyone can hear you. You need to calm down." Mr. Vance let out a disbelieving laugh. He looked at the man up and down, judging the hoodie and the jeans. "Oh, I see. You think you're a white knight? You think this is your chance to be a hero?" "No," the man said simply, shaking his head. "I just think you're being a jerk. There's no need for it." "This is none of your business," Mr. Vance yelled, his face turning red again. He stood up, trying to use his height to intimidate the stranger. "Sit down and mind your own business. This woman is incompetent, and she is ruining my flight." "She's a mother traveling with a toddler," the man countered. He didn't move an inch. He stood his ground, looking Mr. Vance right in the eye. "It's hard enough as it is without you acting like a child. Look at the kid. He's terrified. Is that what you want? To scare a little kid?" "I don't care about the kid," Mr. Vance shouted. "I care about my comfort. I paid good money." "We all paid money," the man said. His voice remained incredibly steady, which made Mr. Vance look even more unhinged by comparison. "But none of us own the plane. And none of us have the right to abuse other passengers." "Sit down." Mr. Vance's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He wasn't used to being talked back to, especially not by someone in a hoodie. He looked around for support, but he found none. The teenagers had stopped recording and were watching with their mouths open. The flight attendant was walking back down the aisle, looking relieved that backup had arrived. "You can't talk to me like that," Mr. Vance sputtered. "I will have you thrown off this plane." The man in the hoodie just smiled a tiny, sad smile. "I haven't done anything wrong, but you? You're harassing a woman and her child. Who do you think they're going to throw off?" The tension in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. For a moment, it looked like Mr. Vance might actually throw a punch. His fists were clenched at his sides and his chest was heaving. But the man in the hoodie didn't flinch. He just waited. He had a calmness that was unbreakable. It was the kind of calmness that comes from seeing a lot of life, and realizing that getting angry doesn't fix anything. Slowly, Mr. Vance seemed to realize that he had lost the room. He looked at the flight attendant, who was standing with his arms crossed, staring him down. He looked at Maya, who was looking at the stranger with tears of gratitude in her eyes. "This is ridiculous," Mr. Vance muttered, sitting down heavily. "This country is going to the dogs?" The man in the hoodie ignored the comment. He didn't gloat. He didn't say, "I won." He just turned his attention away from the bully and focused entirely on Maya. He leaned down slightly so he was on her eye level. "Are you okay?" Maya nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek with the back of her hand. Yeah, thank you." "You didn't have to do that." "Of course I did," he said softly. He looked at Leo, who was peeking out from Maya's neck. The man's face softened completely. The sternness was gone, replaced by a warmth that was genuine. "Hey there." "Little man," the man whispered to Leo. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, Wrapped candy, something simple, like a lollipop or a piece of chocolate. It's a pretty loud playing, huh? Leo looked at the candy, then at his mom. When Maya gave a tiny nod, Leo reached out a trembling hand and took it. Thank you, Maya whispered. She felt like a heavy weight had been lifted off her chest. For the first time in an hour, she could breathe. The man looked up at the overhead bin. He noticed that the bag Maya had struggled with earlier was sticking out just a little bit. It wasn't secure. That bag looks heavy, he said. Do you want me to shift it? I don't want it to fall on you. Oh, you don't have to, Maya started to say. But he was already reaching up. He lifted the heavy suitcase with one hand, easily moving it deeper into the bin so the door would close properly. Then he noticed the diaper bag on the floor at Maya's feet. It was bursting at the seams, spilling wipes and toys onto the floor. He knelt down on the dirty carpet of the airplane aisle. It didn't matter to him that he was wearing nice jeans. He started picking up the spilled items, a pacifier, a small toy car, a pack of wipes. He handed them to Maya one by one. Here you go, he said, handing her the toy car that Leo had been crying for earlier. I think this belongs to him. Leo grabbed the car with a happy squeak. Vroom, he said quietly. The man laughed. It was a nice, deep laugh. Exactly, vroom. While he was down there, the flight attendant walked up. Sir, thank you for stepping in, the attendant said quietly. We were about to get the captain, but this is much better. No problem, the man said, standing up and brushing off his knees. He looked at Mr. Vance one last time. Mr. Vance was slumped in his seat, staring at the seat in front of him, refusing to make eye contact. He looked smaller now. The arrogance had been drained out of him, replaced by a sullen silence. The man leaned in close to the flight attendant and spoke softly, but Maya could hear him. If he keeps it up, maybe move him? Or her. She doesn't need to sit behind him. We'll take care of it, the attendant promised. Then the attendant turned to Mr. Vance. Sir, I'm going to need to see your passport and boarding pass again. What? Why? Mr. Vance grumbled. Standard procedure when passengers are disruptive, the attendant said coolly. Mr. Vance grumblingly handed over his documents, but he didn't dare yell again. Not with the man in the hoodie standing right there. The man looked back at Maya. You're going to be okay. Kids cry? It happens. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about being a mom. I just feel so guilty, Maya admitted, her voice cracking. Like I'm bothering everyone. You're not, he said firmly. You're doing a great job. He looks like a cool kid. Just focus on him. Forget that guy. He reached out and gently patted Leo on the head. Leo actually smiled at him. It was amazing how one person's kindness could completely change the energy. Just 5 minutes ago, Maya felt like the whole world was against her. Now she felt like she had an ally. A strong, unexpected ally. The man gave Maya a final nod. A small, humble gesture that said, I've got your back. And then he turned to walk back to his seat. As he walked down the aisle, the atmosphere on the plane shifted. People stopped whispering. They sat up a little straighter. The teenagers put their phones away. It was as if this man had reminded everyone that they should be decent human beings. As he passed row 24, a woman in the aisle seat did a double take. Her eyes went wide. She nudged her husband, her mouth forming a silent, "Oh my God." The husband looked confused for a second, and then his eyes widened too. They recognized him. The beard, the hair, the kind eyes, the way he carried himself with zero ego despite his fame. It was Keanu Reeves. The recognition began to ripple through the cabin. People in the back rows who hadn't noticed before started whispering. Is that? Yeah, I think that's him. Whoa, but Keanu didn't react. He didn't wave to the crowd. He didn't look for applause. He just sat back down in his seat, pulled his hood up, and opened his book again. He was done. He hadn't done it for attention. He had done it because it was the right thing to do. Maya watched him sit down. She didn't know he was a famous movie star. To her, he was just a stranger who saw someone in trouble and decided to help. That made it even more special. She turned back around in her seat and hugged Leo tight. See, Leo? She whispered. There are nice people in the world. Leo was busy rolling his toy car on the tray table, making quiet engine noises. The crying was over. The stress was melting away. Behind her, Mr. Vance was fuming. He had his earphones in now, blasting music to block out the world, but he kept shooting angry glances at the back of Keanu's head. He knew he had lost. He had tried to assert power over someone vulnerable, and a stronger force had stepped in to stop him. He felt small, and he hated it. But the story wasn't over. Mr. Vance wasn't the type of person to accept defeat quietly. He was simmering with resentment, looking for a way to get the last word, unaware that his behavior was about to trigger a consequence he never saw coming. The instant karma that the title promised was just getting started, and the gears of fate were already turning. The plane was strangely quiet after Keanu sat down. The loud hum of the air conditioning seemed to fill the silence left by Mr. Vance's shouting. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged above, accompanied by the familiar chime that made everyone instinctively check their buckles. Outside the small windows, the ground crew was pulling away the large orange cones that signaled the plane was about to push back from the gate. Maya finally felt her heart rate slow down. She took a deep breath and exhaled, smoothing Leo's hair. He was happily occupied with the toy car, rolling it back and forth on the tray table, making quiet, zoom sounds. The nightmare of the last hour felt like it was fading. She looked out the window, watching the terminal building drift away as the tug vehicle pushed the aircraft backward. She thought the worst was over. She thought Mr. Vance had been shamed into silence, but behind her, Mr. Vance was seething. He wasn't feeling shame. He was feeling a cold, hard rage. To him, the situation wasn't that he had bullied a woman and a child. In his mind, he was the victim. He believed he had been disrespected by the airline, ignored by the staff, and humiliated by a stranger in a hoodie. He sat with his arms crossed tight against his chest, his foot tapping nervously. He kept glaring at the back of Keanu's head, wishing he could say something else, something cutting that would wipe that calm look off the man's face. But he knew if he opened his mouth, the flight attendant was standing right there, waiting for an excuse. The plane came to a stop as it waited for clearance to taxi to the runway. The intercom system clicked on. "Folks, this is the captain speaking," the captain's voice boomed through the speakers. "We are currently third in line for takeoff, so we should be in the air in about 15 minutes. The weather looks great, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight." 15 minutes. That was all Mr. Vance had to endure before the noise of the engines would drown out the toddler and he could put on his noise-canceling headphones. But the waiting felt like torture. He felt trapped. The claustrophobia of the tight seat, combined with his anger, made him feel like the walls were closing in. He looked over at the empty seat next to him. It should have been empty. But then he saw the flight attendant walking down the aisle again. This time, he wasn't holding a trash bag or a pitcher of water. He was holding a phone and a clipboard, and he was walking with a purpose. He stopped right at Mr. Vance's row. "Sir," the attendant said. His voice wasn't unkind, but it was very firm. "I need you to unbuckle your seatbelt and gather your belongings." Mr. Vance blinked, confused. "What? Why?" "We haven't taken off yet. You are being removed from the flight," the attendant said simply. A ripple of shock went through the surrounding rows. The teenagers who had been recording earlier perked up instantly, sensing a new twist in the drama. Maya turned around in her seat, her eyes wide. "Excuse me?" Mr. Vance sputtered, his face turning a deep shade of crimson. "You can't be serious. I haven't done anything. That woman is the one causing the disturbance." "That is not how the crew saw it," the attendant said, lowering his voice so the whole plane wouldn't hear, though everyone was trying to listen. "And it is certainly not how the captain saw it on the camera. You have been verbally abusive to other passengers. You kicked a seat. You refused to follow crew instructions. We have a zero-tolerance policy for disruptive behavior, especially when it involves harassment. This is illegal." Mr. Vance yelled, standing up. "I paid for this ticket. I have a meeting. You can't throw me off because of a crying baby." "It is not about the baby," the attendant said calmly, cutting him off. "It is about your behavior. The captain has made the decision. If you do not comply voluntarily, we will have to involve airport security, who are currently waiting at the jet bridge door. Mr. Vance looked down the aisle toward the front of the plane. Sure enough, through the gap in the curtain of the galley, he could see the reflection of a security officer's vest. The reality of the situation hit him like a bucket of ice water. He was actually getting kicked off. "You will regret this," Mr. Vance hissed at the attendant. "I am a lawyer. I will sue you and this entire airline. I will make sure you lose your job." "I'm just doing my job, sir," the attendant replied, not blinking. "Now, please." "Your bag." Mr. Vance was shaking with humiliation. He knew every eye on the plane was on him. He stood up and yanked his expensive leather satchel from under the seat in front of him. He tried to look dignified, like he was choosing to leave, but his trembling hands betrayed him. He grabbed his blazer from the seat and threw it over his arm aggressively. He stepped into the aisle. As he did, he looked down the row toward Keanu. Keanu hadn't turned around. He was just looking out the window, seemingly uninterested in the commotion. This angered Mr. Vance even more. He wanted a reaction. He wanted Keanu to look scared or impressed. But Keanu acted like Mr. Vance didn't even exist. Mr. Vance began the long walk of shame up the aisle. It was a narrow path lined with judgment. As he walked past the rows of passengers, the mood changed. Initially, people were just watching in silence. But as he passed the rows where people had seen him kick the seat and yell at Maya, a low murmuring started. Finally, someone whispered loudly. "Good riddance," a man in a business suit muttered. Shaking his head, Mr. Vance tried to stare straight ahead, pretending he couldn't hear them. He gripped the handle of his bag so hard his knuckles turned white. He just wanted to get off the plane. He wanted to get away from these people who judged him. He walked quickly, his shoes squeaking on the carpet. Trying to escape? He was just passing row 20, near the front of the economy section. When karma decided to have the final say, in his haste and blinded by his anger, Mr. Vance failed to see that the floor of the plane was slightly uneven right where the carpet joined the metal of the galley floor. His polished dress shoe, the one he had been so proud of earlier, caught on the edge of the metal strip. It wasn't a graceful trip. He stumbled hard, his feet tangling together. He flailed his arms, trying to grab onto a seat back to steady himself, but his hands slipped. Whoosh. His expensive leather satchel swung forward, hitting the metal wall of the galley with a loud thud. But that wasn't the worst part. As he flailed, his phone, the one he had checked for damage earlier in the terminal, slipped out of his blazer pocket. It seemed to happen in slow motion. The shiny black device spun in the air and then crashed onto the hard metal floor of the airplane. Snap. The sound was sickeningly clear. The screen face planted right onto a metal bolt sticking up from the floor. Mr. Vance caught himself on the doorframe, saving himself from a full face plant, but he was bent over awkwardly. He froze for a second, looking down at his phone. It lay there, screen shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. It was completely destroyed. A few people couldn't help it. A nervous giggle escaped from a teenager a few rows back. Then someone else chuckled. It wasn't a mean laugh, really. It was just the irony of it. The man who cared so much about his status and his expensive things had just destroyed his own phone because he was in a rage. The flight attendant standing at the door didn't laugh. But he didn't help Mr. Vance up either. He just stood there holding the clipboard, waiting. Mr. Vance's face burned hotter than ever before. He snatched the broken phone off the floor and shoved it into his pocket. He felt broken. His ego was bruised, his things were broken. And his reputation on this flight was ruined. "Move," he grumbled at the flight attendant, trying to push past him to get out the door. "Watch your step." "Sir," the attendant said politely. Mr. Vance stepped into the jet bridge. The air was cool there, away from the judgment of the passengers. He heard the door close behind him with a heavy thud that sounded final. Inside the plane, the atmosphere shifted instantly. It was like a storm had passed and the sun had finally come out. The tension that had been choking the cabin evaporated. People started talking in normal voices again. The teenagers put their phones away, looking satisfied. Maya let out a long breath she didn't know she was holding. She turned to look at Keanu, who was now watching the flight attendant close the overhead bin where Mr. Vance's bag would have gone. Keanu looked up and caught Maya's eye. He didn't smile broadly or wave. He just gave her a slow, reassuring nod. It was a shared moment of understanding. "He's gone. You're safe now." Maya smiled back, tears welling up in her eyes again, but this time they were tears of relief. "Thank you," she mouthed across the aisle. Keanu put a finger to his lips and pointed at Leo, who was now asleep, his head resting on Maya's arm. "Smart kid," Keanu whispered. Just loud enough for her to hear, the plane began to taxi. The engines roared to life, pressing everyone back into their seats. The crying was gone. The shouting was gone. The only thing left was the gentle hum of the aircraft carrying a group of strangers who had just witnessed a very public lesson in kindness and consequences. The man who thought he was the most important person on the plane was now stuck at the gate, watching them fly away. And the mother who felt like the least important person was now flying high, protected by the kindness of a stranger who turned out to be a hero in disguise. Outside the window, the terminal shrank away. Maya imagined Mr. Vance standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the plane lift off, holding his broken phone, realizing that no amount of money or yelling could buy you class. She closed her eyes and leaned back, finally ready for the journey home. As the wheels of the plane lifted off the runway, the heavy, suffocating weight that had been pressing down on Maya's chest for the last 2 hours finally began to lift. The giant aircraft tilted its nose toward the sky, and the city below turned into a grid of tiny lights in gray streets. Maya watched through the small scratched window as the ground fell away. She knew that down there, in that busy terminal, Mr. Vance was likely pacing back and forth, yelling at a customer service representative, holding his shattered phone and fuming in his own anger. But up here, 35,000 feet in the air, he was gone. The nightmare was over. Leo had fallen asleep the moment the engines roared to full power. The vibration of the plane must have soothed him, acting like a giant lullaby machine. His head was resting heavily on Maya's arm, his mouth open slightly, breathing in that deep, rhythmic way that only sleeping children can. Maya shifted her arm slightly to get the blood flowing again, wincing at the pins and needles, but she didn't move him. She just watched him sleep, feeling a wave of fierce, overwhelming love wash over her. He was her world, and she had fought hard to protect him today. She felt like she had run a marathon, her body exhausted and her mind drained. But her spirit was lighter than it had been in a long time. The "fasten seatbelt" sign dinged off, and the captain's voice came over the intercom, chatting casually about the flight time and the weather at their destination. The atmosphere in the cabin had changed completely. It was no longer a place of tension and judgment. It felt like a sanctuary. The air seemed fresher, the lights softer. It was amazing how removing one toxic person could completely shift the energy of 100 strangers. The flight attendant, the same one who had stood up to Mr. Vance, walked down the aisle with a beverage cart. When he got to row 28, he stopped. He didn't just ask for their order politely. He bent down so he was eye level with Maya. "I just want to apologize again for the delay and the disturbance back at the gate," he said, his voice low and sincere. "That was completely unacceptable behavior, and I want you to know that we will be filing a formal report. You and your son shouldn't have had to deal with that." Maya shook her head, offering him a tired smile. "You don't need to apologize. You handled it perfectly. I'm just glad he's gone." "We all are," the attendant said, glancing toward the back of the plane where Keanu was sitting. "It's rare to see someone stand up like that. It restored a bit of my faith in people today." He handed Maya a cup of ice water and a small bag of pretzels. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into his apron pocket and pulled out a small, sealed bag of cookies, the kind usually reserved for first-class passengers. He placed it on Maya's tray table. "For the little guy," he whispered, winking at her. "For when he wakes up." "Thank you," Maya said, genuinely touched. "That's really kind." "Enjoy the flight," he said, moving on to the next row. Maya turned her head to look across the aisle. Keanu was sitting there, his hood still up, reading a book. He hadn't asked for anything. He was just content to be left alone. He must have felt her looking because he glanced up. His eyes were kind and calm. He didn't say anything, but he raised his water bottle in a silent toast to her. It was a small gesture, but it made her feel like she was part of a secret club of people who had survived a difficult moment and come out the other side, the woman sitting next to Maya. The one who had been sleeping with her headphones on also woke up as the smell of the drink cart drifted by. She took off her headphones and looked at Maya, really looked at her for the first time. She saw the tiredness in Maya's eyes and the sleeping child. She didn't look annoyed anymore. Is he finally out? The woman asked softly, nodding toward Leo. Yeah, he's out cold, Maya whispered back. I'm sorry about earlier. He was having a really hard time. The woman waved her hand, brushing away the apology. Please, don't worry about it. I have nieces and nephews. I know how it is. Honestly, I was more annoyed by that guy behind you than the baby. He was a piece of work. Maya let out a small laugh. It felt good to laugh. He really was. Are you heading home or visiting? The woman asked, shifting her body to face Maya, creating an open, friendly space between their seats. We're going to visit my parents, Maya said. My husband is deployed overseas right now, so I'm doing the solo parenting thing for a few months. It's harder than I thought it would be. The woman's face softened with sympathy. Wow, you are a superhero. I mean it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You're doing a great job. Thank you, Maya said, her eyes tearing up again, but this time they were happy tears. I really needed to hear that today. For the rest of the flight, the dynamic in the back of the plane continued to shift. It was like a ripple effect. Kindness was contagious. The teenager in the row across the aisle, who had been recording the drama earlier, put his phone away. He saw Leo's toy car on the floor where Keanu had picked it up earlier. He leaned over and grabbed it, placing it gently on Maya's empty seat. I think this fell earlier, he mumbled, looking a bit embarrassed. Thanks, Maya said with a warm smile. An older man sitting in front of them turned around and offered Maya his blanket. I always get cold on these flights and I have an extra. Looks like you might need it more than me. Maya accepted the blanket and covered Leo. It was soft and smelled like laundry detergent. She looked around the cabin. These people, strangers just an hour ago, were now her allies. They had seen a bully get what he deserved, and instead of celebrating the drama, they chose to spread kindness. They chose to help the person who had been targeted. It was a beautiful thing to witness. She looked at Keanu again. He was the spark that started it all. By stepping in, he had given everyone else permission to be decent. He had shown them that it was okay to stand up for someone, that it was okay to care. He was sitting quietly, seemingly unaware of the impact he had made. He wasn't looking for praise. He was just a man, reading his book, enjoying the flight. About an hour before landing, the pilot announced that they were beginning their descent. The clouds turned from fluffy white to golden pink as the sun started to set below them. Maya nudged Leo gently. Hey, sleepyhead, she whispered. Look at the sky. Leo rubbed his eyes and sat up, blinking. He looked out the window and gasped. Wow, he said softly. He pressed his nose against the glass, mesmerized by the colors. Cool, right? Maya said, yeah. The lady next to them smiled at the sight. Best view in the world. As the plane dropped through the clouds, the reality of the landing set in. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged on. The flight attendants came through to check seats. When the plane touched down on the tarmac with a soft bump, Leo let out a little squeal of delight. We flied. We flew, Maya corrected, hugging him. The taxi to the gate was smooth. When the plane arrived at the jet bridge and the seatbelt sign finally pinged off, everyone stood up at once. There was the usual scramble for bags, but the mood remained patient. Maya stood up and stretched. Her back was sore and her arms were tired from carrying Leo, but she felt strong. She reached up to open the overhead bin to get her heavy suitcase. She dreaded it. She remembered how she struggled to lift it earlier, how she had hit the man across the aisle, how Mr. Vance had mocked her. She grabbed the handle and pulled, but it was stuck. It had slid too far back. She stood on her tiptoes, straining dots. Suddenly, a hand reached up from the seat behind her. It wasn't Keanu this time. It was the teenager who had returned the toy car. He stood up and easily pulled the bag toward the edge of the bin. "I got it," he said. He lifted it out and placed it gently in the aisle for her. "Thank you so much," Maya said, surprised. "No problem," the boy said, looking at his shoes. "Have a good trip?" People started filing out of the plane. Maya gathered her backpack, Leo, and the suitcase. She shuffled slowly toward the exit. The flight attendants were standing by the door, saying goodbye to every passenger. "Thanks for flying with us," the head attendant said to Maya as she passed. He touched her arm lightly. "Take care of yourself." She stepped into the jet bridge. The air was cool and smelled of airport food. She walked slowly, letting the crowd move ahead of her. She didn't want to get stuck in a tight rush again. When she walked into the terminal building, she stopped for a moment to get her bearings. She looked at the arrival screens to find baggage claim. Then she saw him. Keanu was standing near a pillar, waiting for the crowd to thin out. He had his backpack over one shoulder and was looking at his phone. He looked like any other traveler, tired and ready to go home. Maya hesitated. She didn't want to bother him. She didn't want to be another fan asking for a selfie. But she felt like she owed him something real. She took a deep breath and walked over to him. "Excuse me?" she said softly. Keanu looked up. When he saw her and Leo, his face broke into a genuine, warm smile. "Hey, how was the rest of the flight?" "It was great," Maya said. "He slept the whole way. I wanted to thank you. For what you did back there? You really saved me." Keanu shook his head, his expression humble. "You didn't need saving. You were doing fine. That guy was he was having a bad day, I guess. But nobody deserves to be treated like that." "It meant a lot to me," Maya said. "And it made the rest of the passengers realize they needed to be kind, too. Everyone helped me after that. You started a chain reaction." Keanu looked down.